Hi, this is Darren and this is Tip Tap Game Clash. We're back with a special episode where we look at Streets of Rage 4. The original Streets of Rage came out in the arcade and helped launch the success of the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis. So it's great to see what .emu, Lizardcube and also Guard Crush Games has come up with this reimagining of Streets of Rage 4. I've got it on the Xbox, PC and Nintendo Switch. Unfortunately not the PlayStation version because that's another lot of money I don't want to pay out on. But we're going to do a comparison just to see how the games vary compared to different versions or formats, and then ultimately if that game's any good. So check out the full review, and this is Darren. Cheers.
In the late 80s and early 90s, side-scrolling beat-em-ups were incredibly popular, from the likes of The Simpsons the arcade games, X-Men, Final Fight, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and of course Streets of Rage. Oh, I forgot Golden Axe as well. Streets of Rage though was the main kind of rival to Final Fight, and Sega introduced a few different elements to kind of make the game feel a bit more varied. After its initial arcade release, it was soon announced that it would be launching on the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis depending on your region as one of the early launch games. Sega also done a sensible thing by releasing it on its Sega Master System and also Sega Game Gear. These versions weren't very good and lacked multiplayer, so that sucked. Since its initial release, the original Streets of Rage game has now been on 14 different platforms, including the Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, Android phones and even iOS. A year after Streets of Rage was released, Streets of Rage 2 hit the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. This game was a significant marked improvement over the original game and introduced a number of new characters such as Max and Skate, along with keeping Blaze and Axel. The main thing what Streets of Rage 2 done was rebalance the entire game, introducing new characters, new sounds, and of course new moves. The moveset for each brawler was significant and certainly made Final Fight seem weak in comparison. It was 2 years after this though that Streets of Rage 3 came out, and this is when the series dipped. Not because it was a poor quality title, but because the challenge was ramped up significantly, making it harder for gamers to kind of get into that groove. And this time we're back thanks to Lizardcube, .emu and also Guard Crush Games. These are some of the folks who worked on Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap, that remaster which came out a couple of years ago, and was bloody amazing. So knowing that we're in safe hands for this latest game is a blessing. So let's kick things off as we jump into Streets of Rage 4. So I'm currently playing 3 different versions. Streets of Rage 4 on the Nintendo Switch, Xbox, and the Microsoft Xbox PC version, which is slightly different to the version that you can get on the likes of Steam. Now as I've played through each of the games, I have noticed some small differences, which I'll touch on shortly, but ultimately all the games seem to play incredibly well, regardless of which platform you do pick up. A couple of things to note: that for the Xbox version I'm using the Xbox One X. For the PC version though, I'm using an old AMD A12 processor, so I'm not actually using my desktop machine, so I wanted to see how it fared on a laptop, or if something mediocre would run it okay, which it does. I will put details of the laptop in the description below so you've got some notes. All platforms do support 4-player, so just make sure you've got enough controllers, but on the online mode it's 2 players only. So bear that in mind when you're jumping into a game online. Brawlers in general though are more fun in the couch co-op anyway, because they maximise that thing where you can elbow nudge your mates because they've actually punched you in the head when they shouldn't have. That's one thing that Streets of Rage actually originally done, where that you could harm the other player. You had to be really careful about how you approach the enemies and not get in the way of any punches or kicks. Streets of Rage as a legacy has always had incredible audio, and the score in this seems to be no exception. It demonstrates the attention to detail the developers have gone to recreate that original kind of feel of Streets of Rage and bring it bang up to date, with bucket loads of synth action just for good measure. The sound effects are also really similar to what we had in the Mega Drive era, with lots of yelps, screams and ahs going on. One thing to note though is that the female voices of the villains, or those women that you decide to beat up, they've been replaced with men grunts, so there's something different there from the original series in the 90s, and I'm not sure if there's a reason behind that, maybe to ensure that domestic violence isn't encouraged. I don't know, but it's just slightly off-putting when you're attacking an enemy and they are sounding very much like a man. When starting for the first time, you'll be introduced to 4 characters, so Blaze and Axel from the original series, then Holly, who is Adam's daughter. Adam does make an occurrence as soon as you get so far within the game, and he becomes who was in Streets of Rage 3 as the long-armed, bald-headed guy. Nothing to do with Dao Sim, I promise. Each character does have different attributes. So if we look at Holly first, so Holly's probably the weakest of attacks, but the fastest in speed. Then you have Blaze, then Axel, and then Floyd. Floyd is incredibly strong and certainly somebody you want to take into the boss fight. However, getting there with Floyd can often be quite challenging because of his slowness. Axel provides that balance where you've got strength and speed, but both Blaze and Holly, because they offer such quick attacks, are able to do combos far more effectively. As a player, you've got to kind of work out that balance. And once you've unlocked Adam as a player, Adam and Axel kind of sit at the same level, so you've got kind of parity there if you're doing a multiplayer game. Controls of each of the characters are incredibly tight, and the execution on the controller does make it quite straightforward, thanks in part to there being an independent jump, pick up, attack, and then like your special attack buttons. Performing a special attack does drain your energy, so you just need to be aware when to use it. One of the good things about Streets of Rage 4 compared to its predecessor, that you can actually regain your energy if you're able to combo your attacks against the enemies. This will then recoup some of that energy bar, so you don't feel like you're losing out too much, but it doesn't give you that full energy back. And then finally, if you mash 2 buttons together, so on the Xbox controller that's B, Y, and then on the Nintendo Switch it will be your A, X buttons, you can then do like a blast attack, which will kind of defeat enemies within a certain radius around you. These are limited to the stars that you can collect, which are kind of scattered around each level. When doing a multiplayer game, it's important that the person with the most broadest special attack then collects those stars, so that way when you're doing the boss fights or kind of in a concise area with lots of enemies, you would maximise the damage impact caused by it. And some of the characters, especially like Blaze, the radius is quite small when you trigger this. As you do play through the game, you will go through a number of different environments, and the game takes about 3 hours, roughly, maybe a bit less, just to play through on the story mode. And actually, for a side-scrolling brawler, that's quite lengthy. At the end of each level, you can then change your character, so when you start the new level, you've got a new character, and that means you can kind of work out roughly where you might need to switch things up. This does come in incredibly helpful, especially once you realise what the boss encounters are like, because when you're going into those boss encounters, if you want somebody really strong, make sure you prep like Floyd to take into those, and learn these patterns of execution are key to playing brawlers really well, knowing when to attack and when to defend, and having those right characters who can kind of execute the most attacks in a specific amount of time is the key to winning. So I have seen on Reddit and also on a number of other comments that there seems to be some people who think that a Nintendo Switch version has an input delay. Actually, I don't think that's the case. And playing through the games on each of the different platforms, I have noticed there are slight differences, only minor, and I actually think the Nintendo Switch version is probably the best version. The Nintendo Switch version counts combos slightly different. I'll put a clip here so you can see what I mean. Interestingly, because of this, it means you're able to stack higher combos compared to the other platforms. And the main benefit to this is that the more combo your stacks, the higher your score you get, and the quicker you can earn extra lives. And therefore it makes the game more compelling, because actually you want to set that combo higher to get the life to then take on, because when you get to the boss fights you're going to burn through those with no ease at all. I'm not sure if this is because of a lag input, but it certainly feels slightly different, and the reason might be because each port to each of the different platforms has been handled by a different developer. But for now, the Nintendo Switch version certainly seems to have the edge from my perspective in how I can play through the game. Within each level there are also hidden boss battles, and these boss battles take place in the original games, so Streets of Rage 1 to 3. When you trigger these, you will revert back to the old pixelated graphics, and initially it can be quite alarming to exactly what's going on. If you played the original games, there will be a sense of nostalgia that certainly will come from these, and the main thing is they don't detract from the game experience what you're playing. Even the conversions of the new characters like Floyd and Holly to the old 16-bit era certainly work impressively well. And it's these kind of surprises that make you keep wanting to come back and play, which is crucial in side-scrolling brawlers, typically because they're too short. So far, I've been loving my time with Streets of Rage 4 and highly recommend it. If you've got an Xbox or an Xbox Games Pass on a PC, it's currently free to play, so certainly worth a download. For the Nintendo Switch, it's about £24 or the same on other platforms as well if you do want to make an actual purchase, and it does seem to be good value, especially if you've got 4 mates you feel quite happy to share that intimate space with on a couch. Regardless of the version, Streets of Rage 4 is the pinnacle of side-scrolling brawlers. It'll be interesting to see what developers do next in order to trump the success of Streets of Rage 4. If you enjoyed this review, please make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. This is Darren and this is Tip Tap Game Clash.